So good evening, guys. Very delighted to be here, and we have like a very interesting topic of any business that actually starts, in any country, right, across the world, and which is customer data. Customer data is something that you get to see on the first day of your business, and we have some, very big names right now in our panel, and we would be very happy to actually share and the experiences on what do we see on customer data, how does that work, how do you track customer data, why it's very important, and various things across it. So first of all, welcome the panelists. Very happy to hosting this particular and interesting panel. I would like to start with a very interesting question on with all the brands, right? We have been into pandemic, for almost 2 years, right? And you guys would have seen a tremendous change in terms of how customers' behavior was, how you were looking at customers, and how it is today. So we can start with anybody, and would you like to tell us that why it was very important for you to see customer data post and pre-pandemic, and what has changed right now?
So maybe I'll take it because I'm in telecom industry, and I've been in telecom since almost 20 years, so I've seen that transition. And pandemic was extremely interesting in terms of how telecom usage went up. Not only that, specifically to the SIM buying behavior, which was traditionally always, you walk into a retail shop and the way it was being bought. For the first time, we saw that customers were started ordering even SIM cards at home, right? So I actually had the D2C setup for the company, and our numbers just zoomed up. And it's not only, lot of the D2C conversation, whenever this happens, it's extremely elite and, the top 2000 pin codes and all of that. But what we learned was surprised us, right? Just couple of quarters back, we completed our distribution in terms of 19,000 pin codes in India, which means that the change in behavior is not only limited to the top metros and the elite customer, the typical D2C customer that comes to the mind, but it's gone right deep rural, the last pin code of India, right? And connecting back the all the data, telecom as an industry is always flooded with data. We have actually too much of data in terms of, what we have. But the moment the customer behavior changed, all that data that was available, how do you sort of leverage it? How do you, store it properly? How do you, make it available to the marketeers at the fingertip as and when needed, right? All those factors came in. Pandemic has completely changed, at least in telecom, our distribution game in terms of how it was earlier and how it is. To an extent that we are seeing our entire distribution completely changing for good.
In continuation to what you were saying about distribution, while yes, I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about consumers and how consumers have changed and how data is important from a consumer perspective, I would probably like to bring a different perspective in the beginning of our discussion, which is, and let me start with the data point, almost 92% of life insurance sales in this country happens when a distributor is involved in between or intermediary is involved in between. Whether it is somebody assisting you on the phone or whether it is somebody sitting across you in front of you and actually convincing you to buy the product. Now these distributors are traditionally used to buy and sell face to face, and they have been selling this for like more than 50 plus years. And suddenly at the beginning of 2020 there was a scenario where the face to face meetings were no longer happening and they were not this thing. So this required a huge mindset shift, not only from a consumer point of view, the consumer obviously, but more important for our industry from a distributor point of view. These distributors who were selling face to face were suddenly now forced to sell either on the phone or through video calls or through WhatsApp messages and everything. So what pandemic did was made this shift, which probably would have happened 15, 20 years down the line, but within a year, and actually not even a year, within 6 months, then not just our company, the entire industry migrated. I'm sure my colleague Prasad from Kotak Life will agree. Our industry completely changed because of that. That is from the distributor side. From the consumer side, one thing that we all, especially in India, we believe that we are invincible. मुझे कुछ नहीं होगा, जो भी होगा मेरे पड़ोस वाले को होगा, मेरे नेबर को होगा, मेरे रिश्तेदार को होगा, मुझे कुछ नहीं होगा. And that feeling of invincibility actually started to go completely. We started suddenly feeling very vulnerable because actually a virus which we could not see brought the entire world to a standstill. So that sense of vulnerability actually increased, and whenever there's a sense of vulnerability, there's a sense of risk. And when there's a sense of risk, there's a need for risk mitigation. And whenever there's a need for risk mitigation, products like insurance do very well. So both sides, pandemic actually managed to change completely the behavior.
So I'll just continue from what Abhishek was mentioning about consumers, how they got changed. At the same time, companies also got changed. The way consumers were changing their behavior and the way we are collecting the data and looking at the consumer, that entire part also has undergone significant amount of change. So for example, data was getting created earlier as well. When face-to-face interactions were happening, when telephonic interactions were happening, the data was getting collected, but it was not a structured data. It was available in silos with individuals and it was not available for analysis. But now with pandemic, more and more digital, I'm not saying digital mode of doing business, but digital transformation, the way it has happened, where the physical forms have gone and instead of that, tablet forms have come into the picture, lot of customer level data, lot of distribution level data has started getting captured into the system. And that availability of the data is another important aspect. To analyze, you need to have structured data, correct? Unstructured data, yes, you can analyze, you can get the insights out of it, but you cannot quantify it. Now suddenly that power has come into the company's hand to harness that collected data. And that's where the data evolution has happened, correct? Majority of the startups, they went into the acquisition spree with the hopes that data, what they are going to collect from the customers is going to help them in future to sell, cross-sell other products. That happened with the insurance company as well. Suddenly, a lot of customer data has got captured into the system. The entire AI, ML, what we started talking about, couple of years back or maybe couple of years before pandemic, that entire thing got pushed into reality. I think that's the biggest change which happened from the company perspective along with the consumers. That's how I look at it. And hence the role of data significantly increased, changed. The decision making started becoming more data based than gut based. That's how I can say from the company perspective.
Probably I could share a perspective from a different industry, home interior enhancement and beautification category. What we saw during COVID, all of us spent 2 years staying within home, and I think that changed post-COVID, that we all started all the more getting interested in how do you beautify your interior space, and we saw this consumer behavior change. They no longer required an influencer to give them guidance or look into what needs to go into their space, but consumer themselves started getting more involved into those decision making. So that's the change we saw in customer behavior pattern, and we could learn a lot of things from that.
So just one question on that. So Sharmila, did you see that when basically the customer came back, right? As a consumer insight, did you see them then they were more learned because they were just consuming a lot of content during pandemic on their own, and they were maybe more planned and focused on basically how they want to basically beautify their homes?
I think both. I mean, both a lot of learning, and they want to be involved, and it really impacted the business as a whole.
God, thank you.
The first question that you asked, why is data important for D2C brands? And now all of us talked about how pandemic moved us to go digital. Now with digital, there was a deluge of data, there was a lot of data, we all talked about it. Now parallelly, something else was also kind of taking shape, which is increase in the cyber attacks. And I come from the industry which talks about a cybersecurity solution. Now there, most of my discussions with my management starts with growth. And I think most of you will be having a similar kind of demand, which is what you bring on table as a marketing function. Now, when we talk about growth, I need to understand my customers better. I need to take new use cases to my existing customers. And similarly, I need to unlock and bring new customers onto my fold. Now, unless I understand who I am talking to, what is their intentionality, what do they look for, I'll not be able to do anything, and even not be able to even configure a simple campaign which would be relevant to my audience. Now that's the basic requirement, that why do we need data in D2C? And once we understand that having rich data helps us be more optimal with our efforts, I think that's where we try to solve for the first party data. We have been having access to data through third party, and the gamut there is huge. But when you look at the issues related to those data, the accuracy of data, or even the compliance around those databases were missing. And that's where having direct access to data for D2C brands become critical. Apart from that, you also are able to shape up your campaigns better. You are able to control your messaging better, because you exactly know your customer preferences. You know more about your customers, whom you are talking to, or even your target audience. So that, in my sense, is why data is critical for D2C.
Thank you so much. So I think you correctly said, right? I mean, managing the overall data and then looking at your first party data is equally important. So I think we'll move on to more on the customer funnel side of what you guys see and how important is the first party data for you, right? I think first party data, I come from my, my previous stint was this Flipkart for almost 5 years. And first party data was boon for us, right? Because it's not just, you can learn from it, but you can also sell it like monetization, right? And this is going to be going on and on while you will care for customer privacy, but at the same time, what are your views about your brand leveraging the first party data? And maybe if you can talk about maybe what do you use to track those?
I mean, in telecom, I think one of the panelists sometime back spoke about how telcos have already started leveraging, and there are now, like for example, Jio, we have a fully legitimate Jio ads as a product, right, which is being offered now to advertisers, and there are communications that are there. So absolutely, I mean, what we are using for our own consumption as marketeers, and the kind of insights we are drawing and kind of leverage we are getting, that same structure in an anonymized way has to be made available, can be made available externally also. And I think amongst at least Indian brands, I can say, telcos are the first movers in that sense, right? That who have started making a move towards first monetizing, leveraging first-party data. Monetizing is still a bigger word, but leveraging first-party data even for advertisers on our platform, that's a revolution that started. I mean, 10 years back, who would have thought that telcos competing in ad space, but that's today a reality.
So I completely agree with what Akshay mentioned about the telecom and the way they completely changed the picture and game for the first party data. And I can clearly understand from the perspective that it is that I have worked with Vodafone earlier, the amount of first party data what they collect and they can use for to sell the value added services and other activities, that scope is humongous. Now, if I come back to the insurance segment or insurance sector, the biggest challenge what we face is we are not allowed to sell anything else apart from insurance from regulations. Correct? So regulation perspective, we do not have that liberty. But the first party data becomes far more important from today's situation because of the use cases what we have. from that particular perspective, if I take the example of the people who are visiting our websites in an anonymous manner. Earlier, we never had situations or tools through which I could have retargeted to them. Correct? The people who have come to our website, explored things, they basically consume the content, but they didn't take any action. How do I go back to those set of customers? That entire approach of retargeting, remarketing has completely got opened up with this entire concept of capturing the first party data, either in form of consumers who have dropped in their contact details with us, or the consumers who have come in an anonymous manner. Both way, this first party data, the kind of analytics what we can do, the kind of Google Analytics, the kind of features which has got introduced into it around the first party data, I think the opportunities are huge. Today, somebody who is a repeat customer, who is coming back to our website, we can do a customized targeting to them, correct? Just because of the ability to capture that first party data. Same thing happens with the customers who have interacted with us, have given us the contact number. We have done the telephonic connect with him or her. Even retargeting them on his or her next visit to website, basis the call center interaction, that also gets enabled with this entire first party data part. So those use cases of remarketing, retargeting, as well as customer engagement, I think those opportunities have got opened up a lot, and that too at a huge scale. That's how I look at it.
Sure. See, if I may add there, see, if the question is why first party data, I think even initially I talked about it, but one underlying principle is if you need to do something right, do it yourself. Now that's the power what first party data gives you. When we talked about customers, we talked about going digital, everyone is there. Now people and my consumers or customers, they expect personalization. I can't personalize specific to their requirements if I don't have the right data. And I think we talked about capturing the data from website. And right now we are taking baby step as an organization. For us, it's a journey which has recently started, but we see the value. We see the value specifically from a perspective that most of my customers have been acquired through offline retail network that we have. 80% of my customers are from there. So there, the data that we capture is not credible data. So those are dealer data which have been fed, and the customers' data is missing. The quality is a big concern for the data which was acquired offline. Now, online is where we are solving it because I'm getting access to the direct customer data, and there I'm able to optimize the experience. Now, when it comes to the offline data, we are trying to see if we can incentivize customers to share their own data so I can personalize their experiences. And personalization could be at a product label, personalization could be at an experience level. So there are different ways we can leverage the data. And unless we have it, it will be very difficult to even be relevant to the customers of tomorrow.
Yeah, please.
So I just wanted to add something. I mean, I've spoken, so I don't want to sort of, hog the mic too much. But I think a lot of D2C marketing today is, I mean, that's my feel, is focusing excessively on what is possible, because we are almost like the kid in a candy shop that suddenly, there is post-pandemic, there are customers on our websites, and suddenly there is so much of data, and of course the tools are there, and I think a lot of marketers are over-indexing on the data side. I mean, your question is absolutely valid, but I see a lot of companies completely outsourcing, or completely rather, not giving enough importance to the whole UX journey. I think that's been one of my core learnings in the pandemic, that yes, there are now 100x users that are wanting to, buy from you directly on your apps, on your website, on your platforms. But just that is not really the full journey, right? The good old principles in terms of solving for, okay, what is his user experience journey? What is his, which app? Just reducing the number of clicks, ensuring that even, I mean, once the order is there, then how do you actually execute it on the ground? Outsourcing it to a third party is not really, at least it didn't work for us, right? So solving each of those is also going to give you, far more value and results, as it will perhaps on the data side. Most marketeers are currently focusing excessively on the first part, and perhaps not at all on the second, which is the mid end of the UX part, and the last end, which is actually physical deliveries, and how do you get that experience right. So
Thank you so
that's
much.
my caveat actually.
Yeah. So I think, thank you so much for, I think, sharing that important thing. I think on the customer data, I think the next important thing that for us is basically segmentation, right? So, give you one example. When I was at Big Basket, and Big Basket was in maybe first 100,000, customers, and while we were scaling their app, right, the most important thing was how do we ensure that this guy comes and does at least 4 transactions in a month, right? Because grocery as a business is something that you would need them to, come and transact, because your delivery cost is high. You are already bleeding on the private labels, and most places, right, you need to solve this, right? So we actually did lot of these user onboarding journeys in terms of push notification, in terms of emails, in terms of sending them reminders, and also their purchase patterns, right? And believe me, this is lot of data for even a lack of consumers. If you just look at it and see what all they buy, at one order in a shot, right? But it does help you, because once you basically study that data, it actually tells you that where in the funnel basically that drop is coming. So very interesting. It will be very interesting to hear what basically other brand is experiencing on the segmentation.
So I'll actually give you 2 or 3 different examples from different parts of business. First is obviously the consumer side. Being in life insurance, a consumer stays with it for a period of 15 to 20 years. Over a period of time, the life stage of consumer changes. In almost all cases, the income moves up. So therefore, the need of insurance also changes. And our research tells us that a consumer will buy a life insurance 4 times in a life at least. So our endeavor is to how I can get the maximum share of this 4 times. Because of the medical records being available to us, we are fairly intimate details of consumers are available with us. So what we try to do is, in terms of segmentation, try to figure out what is the best way to give the next product to this kind of customer, because we believe and we know that this consumer is going to move up in life. Move up either financially or in terms of responsibilities, or maybe in terms of enhancing the social stature. So their data actually comes in a lot of handy, because we go back to consumers at least once a year, every year, when the premium payment renews. So therefore, that's an opportunity for us to nurture our data and enrich our data every time. And that helps us in a lot of segmentation, so which is one use case. The second use case for us is, again, for this customer, our industry has also one more problem which is we call as where customers do not stay with us. They don't pay second year or third year onwards. All our costs are front-ended. We have huge cost in acquiring the customers, and we don't make money unless until customer continues to pay the premium. So what we call as persistency, we do segmentation of customers to figure out which bucket of customers are most likely to attract. And therefore, double the efforts are spent on those particular set of customers in reaching out to them, in ensuring that they know about their policy, so that these consumers end up paying every year. And third, which is very important from a financial perspective, is risk. Our industry is also prone to a lot of frauds. And therefore, it is important to identify this fraud, and actually regulator gives us 3 years, that within 3 years you have to figure out if the policy was a fraud and you can cancel the policy. Beyond 3 years you are not allowed to do that. So those 1 or 2 years are available to us to practically go and check whether everything that was done, and we have actually done proper underwriting, and the policy is actually what the customer had really wanted. So their data actually plays a huge important role, and today actually we can, at the policy issuance stage only, we can make out whether this is going to be a fraud or not. And their data actually comes a lot of handy. The point I'm trying to make is data is not just helps you from acquiring or retaining a customer. Data actually helps you across all facets of business, provided it is nurtured properly.
So did you also figured out, and this is an interesting thing which I observed when I was at Flipkart, when we basically looked at our real CAC of data, right? When you basically look at your segment of data and see, isko retarget karna hai kya, shall we go behind him? Because this is some guy who is bidding you a high, LTV, right? And, but then at the same time, you can actually see a similar quality of customer can actually come from your new acquisition. So did you see some kind of a pattern in your business where you think while data is important to retain the customer, at the same time you still prefer to apply the acquisition funnel than a retargeting funnel?
I think there is, actually this question is kind of, I would say, rhetorical kind of a question, because the answer is yes. Data is required on both the sides in terms of retargeting and retaining the same set of customers. But at the same time, when you're going after a new set of customers, and which business does not want new set of customers? So yes, it really helps us in getting the same kind of customers, because we know a lot of details about the customers and the type of customers that they are. So it really helps us in forming a cohort and going after them.
Sure. Anybody else on the data segmentation? Yeah.
Yeah. Adding to what Akshay and Abhishek said, personalization is no more a nice to have thing. I think our customers are already, expecting that from us. Hyper personalization is what they're already expecting. And, customers have started to expect from brands to know in advance what they need before even they make their first step. So segmenting is nothing but, categorizing customers based on business attributes, but it becomes complex if it is based on only one attribute. For example, if you take one customer who's buying a 500 rupees product 10 times and a customer who's buying a 5,000 rupees product once, and if you segment them together, the outreach is going to be a total failure. So understanding and sub-segmenting customers is going to be key. In this case, segmenting customers on value, value plus category plus frequency, value plus category plus frequency, plus new stock versus end of sale purchases. So multiple sub-segmenting is going to be the key. And if you take online and offline customers, consumer behaviors are different. And probably you'll have a customer who's comfortable doing online shopping, and when it comes to high value products, he still wants to go to the offline store, touch and feel, and make a purchase decision. And even if I take the banking as a segment, a consumer is comfortable doing a small ticket transaction to digital, but he will want to go to a physical branch to do a high value transaction. And if we have to take a D2C brand and probably take a category like a skincare product category, it's very important to segment and understand customers on their different life stages and derive at a genome, to see where a customer is evolving. Probably from a stage of being a teenager to a job fresher to a mother. So it's very important to evolve the genome for this customer. And same way, utilizing these data is going to be key in segmenting.
Thank you. So my next question is specifically for Abhishek and Prasad. When you basically use customer data, we discussed upon and touched upon, how do we acquire customer, what do we do with customer? And because you guys are into a very, very critical insurance sector, right? What is your opinion on the utilization of this data post-purchase? How much does it help in terms of, let's say, reviving the business? And what else, or a specific use case you would want to share, with the audience?
So yes, you are correct in terms of when it comes to data utilization, the first thing what we think about is new customer acquisition, that how can I get that customer in. But in life insurance, the post-purchase data analysis is equally important, because unlike other industries, if I take the example of telecom or for that matter banking, there are so many transactions which are continuously happening, correct? When I use phone, I use data, I use voice, I use SMS, I use so many services, and I use it daily, every minute, every second. Something is happening on my device, correct? When it comes to banking, I'll do so many transactions, correct? Now I do UPI transactions, I do check payment, I do money transfer. So many transactions are happening. Now when it comes to life insurance and post-purchase, the policy contracts are as long as 40 years, 50 years as well, correct? Such a long period when customer is going to be with me, and I am doing transaction mostly once in a year. Few customers might be doing transaction once in a month if they are paying premium monthly, but majority of our customers do one transaction in a year, and they are having a long contract with us. Now that having that recall for your brand, for a transaction-led brand, it's easier because it's happening regularly. In our case, we have to infuse more into it, more energy into it, just to have that customer experience and customer engagement in place. And that customer engagement, we have to find ways through which I can reach out to that particular customer and do some amount of engagement. So in our case, all the nudges which happen with the customer are happening with a trigger, and that trigger is what the data is currently helping us find. So for example, Abhishek talked about the renewal, the persistency part of it. Now persistency doesn't come just by reminding the customer that, okay, your policy premium is due, just go and make the payment. That is not an engagement, correct? That is just a reminder to him. But the engagement starts 3-4 months before that, correct? When you start talking about his policy, that, okay, you have this policy, these are the benefits. Then you talk about, okay, you are doing a great thing by having this policy, your family's future is secured. Then you come to the next part, that how important it is to pay the regular premiums and how it ensures your family's future. Then finally you come to the point that, okay, you make the premium payment, and if you are not having any standing instruction with us, please do so, so that you did not remember this due date kind of a thing. Now this is one trigger, this which comes from the data of policy renewal date. The another trigger is all about the special days what we have, correct? So many special days have got invented in last 5-10 years. I have seen word savings day, word investment day, word backup day. There are so many days, correct?
And sale every week now, right? On all the e-commerce sites.
Correct. So there are so many days which have got come into the system. It's all about how do we map those days with the kind of interest that customer has and the kind of data he has left with. So all the customers who have bought a savings plan or the ULIP plan, the market link plans, when they do fund switch, and we know that, okay, they are active fund switchers, how do I use that investment day, connecting it with what he is doing with us as a brand? All those things are all about that data thing. The entire customer lifecycle management is based on the data and that trigger which is coming out of that data. So it is not about just new customers, but existing customers is equally important. And plus for the new purchase, when they come back, new purchase.
I'll just add one more point to what Prasad said. At a very basic level in life insurance, we cover two types of risk. One is either dying too early, or second is living too long. When customer has taken one kind of product, which is probably risk covering the risk of dying too early, I know I have another risk to cover, which is living too long. Yeah. And for living too long, I have multiple products. So just go after the customer in sending the next set of risk to be covered.
Thank you so much. Very interesting, actually. I'll move on to the next set specifically for Sharmila and Sudhanshu. So we are talking about, reading customer data, right? We're talking about how do we target this data. Now, but at the same time, we need to maybe remind ourselves that, we are a very big brand. We're sitting on like a pile of data today. What do you suggest for a small D2C brand who have maybe a startup, right? And maybe just in the market, how do you suggest them to basically leverage this piece of data? Because right now, if you see, normally it's easy to segment your data because you would actually be seeing, people at least in 1 million, right? But when it is hundreds, how do you market them? And so on and so forth. So what are your views on that?
Yeah, Yeah, data is going to be a challenge for a new D2C brand, especially if they are from a unique category, if they are going to be in. So in such cases, one could look upon similar industry data and probably learn from the similar industry whereas who have already made genome on understanding the consumer behavior. And customers' purchase path to conversion, to purchase, is evolving and is very complex. A customer, probably gets a web notification, a mobile notification, goes on to a website, and sees the product and probably makes the purchase in a store. So that complex customer behavior is. So understanding this is going to be a challenge, and capturing this data and refining the data will be the key here.
Just to add to what Sharmila said, so a couple of things that a startup can look at, especially from a perspective that data acquisition can be very costly affair. Now, where do we start? So if you are a D2C kind of brand, definitely you have a website. Now, just looking at your, say, Google Analytics data itself will give you behavioral aspects of your customers. So that can be a starting point. You can also look at the registration data. If you ask your customers to log in, whether you do it through a single sign-on or you let them create their credentials, so you have the basic kind of data which is their name, their email ID, phone number. So that is something to start with. If you have a product, the product itself will throw a lot of data in terms of users. So for example, in our case, I monitor device users on a real-time basis. So I have the behavior of every customer is mapped to the device users patterns. And I know if there are devices at risk. When I say at risk, if they're not getting utilized enough, I see there is a churn, likely churn, and the next year renewal will be at risk. Then you do a different kind of campaign because you have that insights with you. Now, another source of data could be your customer queries that you get. Now, if you are a D2C brand and you are talking to a customer, you can have a simple support or emails coming, so that itself gives you a lot of data. If you are a D2C brand, you will have user reviews, ratings, so that again is a source of data. So these are basic stuff to start with. Then anyway, as you grow, you go to a kind of a e-commerce like platform, you get secondary data, you get to a third-party platform and acquire your, till the cookies last, you have your third-party data available. So that's a mix that you need to play when you are starting. You need to start small and then leverage on the data she talked about, just mapping the audience and expanding the audience. So those are things that you keep doing it repeatedly, your database grows, and then you can play on that.
Thank you so much. So I think one more thing which I would like to add on the startup bit is when you start, you can actually start small. Do an experiment into one is a new user set, gain the data, apply it back to 1%, 2% of a similar user set you would get on, let's say, Google, Facebook. Try basically different platforms at a very, very small scale and see what's basically working for your down funnel revenues. Because at the end of the day, right, if you're getting registration and not conversion, either there is a problem with the product, or you need to basically look down upon that if the campaign which was running, which was good or not, right? So with that, I come to the last question, which maybe one-liner advice to young D2C brands in India from your end, and maybe you can start.
I think, yes, believe in data, but use data, I would say, by using your mind. Don't just believe data blindly, because data has many twists and turns, and there's ways data can be presented. Use data wisely, use your head. Just don't blindly believe data.
I think you actually stole my thunder. I wanted to say that, especially for younger companies, the entire end-to-end user experience is the key. Understanding data and utilizing it is, understand that it's a part of it. It's not the whole thing, right? So long as you do this, you'll be fine.
So I would say it is Yes, data is important. Use data, but don't use somebody else's data. Don't use somebody else's data analysis. You experiment on your own, create your own hypotheses, test them, create data, and then make insights and use them. Rather than relying on something which is available easily in the market, just focus on your own experimentation and your own data collection.
Build data to build business. Treat data as an asset. And treating data as an asset and decisions made, a culture on making decisions based on data should be the two fundamental strategies for any company to, go ahead.
I think if we look at customers, customers are willing to share data as long as they have trust. So that's the underlying thing that we need to build. We need to build trust to be able to get the right data from customers. And then we need to engineer the right conversations. With that, you will get zero-party data, which is far more richer than the first-party data that we get. But as a marketing kind of team, we are the custodians of that trust. We don't need, if we break that trust, the journey breaks there. So we have to take care of that underlying principle.
Thank you so much, speakers. I think it was great to have you on board and thoroughly enjoyed the session. I'm sure audience already is that. So can we have a round of applause for our speakers today? Thank you so much for this evening and looking forward for more. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful, so wonderfully moderated also, sir. Thank you so very much. May I call upon Mr. Rituraj Bidwai to please felicitate our panelists. Really insightful discussion. Please keep the applause going, ladies and gentlemen. Wonderful. Can I request all of you to please come together for a group photograph? Yes, we see such wonderful smiles on stage, calling for some applause. Thank you so much.